Meeting for Thursday, April 28, 2011 will now come to order. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Sir. Mr. Anderpont?
Here.
President Brame?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Mr. Farnham?
Here.
Mrs. Griffin?
Present.
Mr. Guidry?
Here.
Mr. Hassan?
Here.
Mr. Landry? Dr. Mackey?
Present.
Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Spell?
Here.
Mr. Size?
Present.
Mrs. Trimming?
Here.
And Chairman Stelly.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Kathy. Item 3, presentation of a trophy. The coaches requested this item be deferred until Thursday, May 5th, 2011, due to spring break. Item 4, receive report from staff with reference to the I-10 bridge lighting project. Mr. Connor.
Yes, I talked to the city as well as their electrical engineer this past week, and basically discussion, and I think there was an article in the paper this morning about it, but the fixtures for the pilot program would be provided by them in time to put up sometime in the July time frame. So we're still moving forward with the pilot program. I don't believe we've had the DOTD approval yet for the information that's going to be submitted, but that should give them plenty of time to do that.
Any questions for Mr. Connor?
Move to receive report.
Second. Brian?
You can go ahead and finish that item. I was just going to try to insert a little bit of gaming after y'all move on that.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item 4 is received. Mr. Beam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While we were on this item, because the police jury's portion of the lighting project came from gaming, Ellis had asked to just give a brief report tonight on some of the flow of gaming revenues. With the election Saturday, there had been some questions, just sort of refreshers about what exactly is the gaming fund and who gets it and where does it go. So on the slide, on the monitors, and Jessica's passing a copy out, we put a little visual together just to go over that in simplified form. We don't get into all the different numbers and so forth, but it will give people a diagram as far as how that happens. And so I'm just going to quickly go through these. There's 3 slides, and what we call them is the local flow of local gaming funds. The first page you can see, it all starts with what are called taxable gaming proceeds of casinos. And that's in law, and that they show all the different verbiage that everything's based on. In Calcasieu Parish, like other areas, you start with that number and then you multiply a head tax percentage based on all the different agreements. So, for example, there's going to be agreements with LaBerge, Isle Capri, Delta Downs, between the either parish or city. The head tax is in quotes because that is by law what parishes or cities can levy. But generally speaking, we've gotten away from that, and pretty much I think all parishes have, where you enter agreements that are more percentage of those gaming proceeds. But we refer to it as a head tax, and that's what most people call it. And so what you get out of that are what we call local gaming funds. Now, that's not just for the police jury. This would be the whole set of entities within the parish that get some portion of gaming from some source. And at the bottom, you can see I've listed the gaming entities that contribute to this. So, Tom, if you'll go to the next slide. What happens if you're going from left to right? Item 1, off the top, if you will, by state law, educational institutions get some funds. I'll get to that slide in a minute that breaks it down, but generally speaking, it's 1/6 of the local gaming funds. And that's per state law, and the only gaming entity that really doesn't get taken from is Delta Downs. That was a separate agreement. It's got its own set of laws, and there's a whole set of percentages that go to like different horse associations and so forth, and it's all per state law. But they don't. Other than that, it's pretty much 1/6 of the local gaming funds. And again, this is all before it comes to the pool that a lot of people refer to now. The Port of Lake Charles gets some funding, but strictly because of the L'Auberge property, which is the port's property. And if the proposition passes Saturday on Mojito Point, they also would be a part of that. But that's the only reason the port is involved, is because it's indirectly involved with those entities, gaming entities. So after those are taken out, we have what's called the gaming pool. It's officially the Gaming Revenue District, which has its own state law specific to Calcasieu. Y'all have an agreement with the City of Lake Charles and participating municipalities, which are all of them except Westlake, because they chose not to get into the pool because they get their own revenue source from Isle of Capri. So what happens, that everything goes into the pool other than the educational funds and Port of Lake Charles. Tom, go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll quickly just show you the educational so we can come back. The 1/6 I mentioned to you, 60% goes to the school board, 30% McNeese, 10% Sewella. So, and again, that's automatic. That didn't go through y'all at all. So you can go back to slide 2. Once it goes in the gaming pool, the funds are broken out. If you start at the top right with number 3, what we call the small cities allocation. That's every other city outside of Lake Charles or Westlake currently gets, there's a total of $1 million, and it's distributed on a formula of 60% equal 40% by population. And we have updated that based on the latest census numbers. So there were some slight adjustments. Now, if Mojito Point passes Saturday, there has to be a pooling agreement or amendment because it still refers to Sugarcane Bay. But we don't know if it's going to pass yet, and so we can't do anything. But if it does, that would more than likely look pretty much like Sugarcane Bay would have, which if we use that or end up using something close to that, it's 8.7% of the pool, which roughly would double that $1 million. So the small cities allocation, if we go with something that looks like that, will be about double what it is now. Same formula, but again, y'all are going to have to approve that, and we will work on that very soon after Saturday. After all that's said and done, the police, jury, and city split the rest evenly. And that's really the quick and dirty fashion of the way the gaming revenues flow locally. So it was more of a matter of information for the jury and anybody who was watching the program. But if there are any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Beam?
I do.
Mr. Underpont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ryan, do you have a clue about how much the school board gets out of all this? I mean, just,
Yes.
somebody asked me that the other day, and of course,
In 2010, they received $1.85 million. That was their cut, if you will.
1.8,
Yes, McNeese, $927,000, and Sewella, $309,000, for a total of about $3.1 million.
I don't know why I thought the school board would have been getting more than that, but I'm not promoting it, I'm just a little bit confused as to why. Of course, I mean, percentages don't lie, but I mean, what I'm saying is that I thought maybe their percentage might have been a little bit more than that.
Now, that's just for 2010, of course.
Yeah. That's all I have, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Mr. Underpont. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, it may be helpful, and perhaps it's already on our website, of where that money's been spent over the last however many years. I know that y'all prepare that report every year for that y'all send to Baton Rouge. Is that
Yes,
available?
we haven't, that report you're referring to has specific requirements in legislation, so the way that's reported is designed to address the way the law reads. So I don't know that the average citizen reading that we'd have to kind of make it a little more simplified. But we have some gaming breakdown, but it's not that particular one.
I would suggest that y'all work on that. I don't think you can get it done in 2 days, but I'm sure that what Mr. Hassan brought up, that's just the first part of the question. The next thing is going to be, well, what have y'all spent that? I mean, because they're not going to remember all the different
Right.
projects, or they may see projects going on out there and not really realize how it's being paid for.
And we do have it. What we'll do is, if it's not already there, and it could be, because I'm not exactly sure it isn't, but I know in the budget document, there is a whole page that's got a graph, and it breaks all that down, but we can pull it and make it a little easier to where it's not buried, if it's not already. We'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Hassan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, first of all, thank you very much for doing this. I just thought it would be a good idea so people would understand what the flow is. Some thought we distributed it to the educational institutions, and that's not how it's done. Question is, you were just mentioning that there would be a change in that pooling agreement possibly coming. That is done by the Gaming District Board, correct? Is that?
Yes, it's basically Lake Charles Parish and one mayor that's in one of the cities, and it rotates.
It rotates, okay. I just wanted to clarify who's.
And let me get back to Francis's question. In 2000, well, I'm sorry, never mind. I was going to say in 2009 it was higher for the schools, but there was a big dip in 2010. So you're probably correct that it was somewhat higher than that, but 2010 was a down year for gaming overall.
Well, of course, the economy is not exactly where it needs to be anyway, so I'm sure that's one reason why those numbers are down. Thank you, Brian.
Any other questions for Mr. Beam?
Move to receive report.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Brame and a second by Dr. Mackey. Is there any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item 5, receive report from staff with reference to the 2011 animal rabies clinics. Mrs. Shampo. State your name and position for the record, please.
Teresa Shampo. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director. I was asked to give you guys a brief report on the 2011 rabies clinics that were held earlier this month. The first one was on April 2nd at Burton Coliseum, and the second one was held at the Sulphur High football stadium parking lot on the 16th of April. As in every year, the goal for these clinics is to provide convenient, efficient, low-cost rabies vaccination and licensing to citizens. This year, we decided to approach that goal with these initiatives. A 100% drive-through to increase efficiency over prior years, to increase public awareness and participation, and to repeat our high satisfaction of participants. Last year, we had done some surveys and got some really good feedback on the new format, and so we strove to maintain that high level of satisfaction. For this year, the 100% drive-through was extremely well received. I don't know that there was anybody that didn't like the approach. It made it very much easier for the citizens. They didn't have to unload their animals. They didn't have to handle their animals or mix them with other people's animals. There was no aggressive animal problems like we've had in the past. When the animals are out and about, they tend to fight a little bit more. If they never leave your vehicle, there's no chance of that. So it was 100% drive-through. We addressed the citizens through their car windows, and the vets either crawled in the back of trucks or into the back of the cars or handled them right there at the doors, and it worked very, very well. The increased efficiency was achieved. We had an approximate wait time of 15 minutes, which is an improvement over last year. Wait time was approximately 30 to 45 minutes. And years before that, the waits were as much as 2 hours or more. So we feel like we've made huge strides in that area and are getting some really great public feedback on how convenient it is and how fast it is to get through there and get their shots and licenses. The increased public awareness, our new Assistant Director at Animal Services got on the ball and did a really great job with getting awareness out there for the clinics with some television and radio ads. We had notices on the Coliseum and Civic Center marquees, and we used newspaper, Facebook, and flyers in a number of venues. and we feel like we got a really good media blitz out there beforehand so that people knew when it was coming. The customer surveys that we did were nearly 100% positive. To give you an overview of previous years versus this year, number of licenses issued, this slide shows you 2007 through 2011, the numbers. They kind of come and go. I guess it depends on what's going on for people. Last year, our numbers were a little down. We had some logistical planning problems. The clinics ended up being about 2 months later than normal, so it was a little hotter. We feel like maybe that deterred people from coming out. This year, going back to the April dates, you can see that it brought us right back in line with previous years. So we're real happy with that and hope to increase that service next year. All in all, probably the overall thing that you would be interested in is that the estimated net cost of the clinics to the parish is about $3,100. That is what we basically absorbed in the Animal Services Department to provide an estimated citizen savings of approximately $52,800. I think that's a really good return on investment. And I think that in a large part, the success of these clinics is due to the staff. I'd like to ask Nathan Areno, the Animal Services Director, to come up. He probably has a few words to say about his staff, their participation and professionalism, and how far we've come in bringing these clinics on. Thank you.
Good evening to all of you. Do you want me to state my name? Please, in your Areno, Animal Services Director is what Tiffany told me. Did I do that okay? I do have a lot of thanks to give out. We have a great staff at Animal Services, and I'm very proud of them for their efforts concerning these clinics. This was my first year, obviously, to go through this, and it's quite an undertaking when you open something up to the parish and try to accommodate the needs of we have no idea how many people is coming. We try to plan that. We have no idea of what time they're coming, so it's just basically you got to have a good process in place, and it takes a lot of people to make that happen. We have a very, I guess being my first time, we have a very good working relationships interdepartmentally with the parish. Leadership starts at the top, and I think the top of each division, Mr. Beam even was out there helping us, which I found very awesome. Alan worked tirelessly, Teresa, Kane in facilities, Jennifer, we had, I hate to call names, but we had some people that really stepped in. And I guess you could say a lot of people could have turned around and said, it's not my job to do this. And, you know, our guys in facilities built we had two of these. One was at Burton Coliseum, the second one was at Sulphur. And between the first one and the second one, they had this idea to come up with these huts, or I call them huts, and places for people to drive up and actually provide shade for our volunteers, or not volunteers, but staff doing it. And actually tweak the process. I felt the second one was even better than the first one, and the first one was very successful. So thanks to all of our people in facilities. The Sheriff's Department really helped us out with the tent. I could go on and on about the effort that people have put in. And it was, from, I guess, my perspective, being new, a very refreshing thing to see how well not just Animal Services did, but the interdepartmental communication and cooperation that we have at the parish is, in my opinion, stellar, and all the people that were involved in that should be commended for their efforts. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy.
Any questions for Mr. Areno? Mrs. Trimmy?
Actually, I don't think it's for Nathan, since he hasn't been here last year and the year before and all those times. That I'd like to ask Alan, I think, in 2009, had we already started this one side and the other side, or were we doing the old way where you actually came to the Quincy substation and went to the different areas, and the people, it was a more convenient area and time for the people?
Yeah, 2009 was the last year that we had 17 sites. In 2010 was the first year that we had.
Okay, and that's why I want you to look at the numbers. The numbers are still not there, and they're not, because the out areas the Ioways, Bell Cities, the Hayes, the Starks, the DeQuincy's, the Moss Bluff area, those people are not being served, even Benton. And we had 3,743 in 2009, and that's without very much or any advertising. That's just put a deal in the thing and people come. And you can see in 2010, it dropped almost by 1,100. In 2011, it's still almost 800. It's still not there. We're not doing it. So I couldn't do it, and I have too many dogs to be able to do that. But so I brought 2 of them to the vet and that comes to DeQuincy from Southwest Veterinary Clinic. And what I got was a complaint from the vet that says, we don't like the way you're doing this. He printed it off the internet of how in Illinois they're fighting this. They don't want to do it this way. The vets do not want to have to take the money, the $4, and be the ones to take the money and send it into the parish. So I got eat out, I guess, by the veterinarian because they don't want to have to do this. Now, I did mention it to Alan, and this isn't no secret to him because I brought the paper to him and I brought everything. But about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, or whenever it was that I brought the dogs in, and and Alan said the right thing. If the veterinarians would go to the legislature and not make it mandatory that a veterinarian has to actually give the rabies shot, and trained technicians can do the same thing, then they would not have to worry about the rabies shots, and they wouldn't have to worry about collecting the $4 or whatever it is that they send into the parish. And I think they need to look maybe long and hard at that. If that is a burden on the vets, then I understand. But I did bring a little dog that just showed up at the house and Brandon wanted to keep. There you go. So if it shows up and you feed it, it's yours, right? So it got hurt, it got hit or whatever, and the skin started falling off, whatever. So I brought Belle up there along with my other dog, my lab. And when I left, my bill was $158. So I don't know if what I'm saying is by bringing my dog up there for their rabies and then also to look at the other things, yes, he took $4 out of each one of the rabies shots for the parish, but in the end, he came up on top with $158 cash handed to his cashier before they leave because they don't charge anymore. You got to pay to play. So, so those are some of the things that I think we still need to look at because there are many areas of our parish that are not being served by just having these 2 areas. Burton Coliseum is a very long way away for people in Moss Bluff to have to drive to do the Lake Charles one. It's also, and we have almost 20-something thousand homes in the Moss Bluff area. They're not being served. That's a big portion of our population. And then all along the northern quarter, the eastern quarter, and the western quarter of the parish is not being served. So I think we need to look long and hard about maybe not 17, but there can be ways that we can meet the needs of the people of Calcasieu Parish without just, you either got to go here or there. There's got to be another way. I think that we'll see our numbers grow exponentially if we would make it easier and more people-friendly to be able to bring their dogs. Now, keeping them in the car, trucks, every way that you did it was right. It's just you didn't get to all the people. They can't do it. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trimming. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wainwright, those veterinarians they're not forced to give those shots. Don't they have a choice? They can turn that customer away, can they not?
Yes, sir. It's just required that a vet provide the shot.
Right. They have to be the one to administer the vaccination. But if you're in business and you're a veterinarian, there's no law that's forcing you to give rabies shots.
That's correct.
And I get excited whenever we start talking about that, and not in a good way. You know, Ms. Trimmy did kind of like full circle with it and made a point. It's just like a car. If you bring your car to get worked on, they would just love for you. They want to do an inspection. Not every shop, but the ones that know what's going on do, because that gets the car in there. Same thing with the dog. It gets the dog in there. Yeah, you got to go through a little bit of paperwork, send that $4 to the parish, but my gosh, she just told the story. He charged you, what, $158? That guy knows what's going on. I mean, it's all about making money. You can't charge for the services if you don't get the animal in. And the reason that you went there was to get the rabies. Oh, you knew, oh gosh, it's time, I got to get that done. And so now the dog comes in. Maybe you would have gone anyway eventually, but perhaps not. So I don't have a lot of
heartworm check
sympathy.
also.
Exactly. I don't have a lot of sympathy for the ones that don't want to do it. I'm sorry.
Mr. McMillan, if you don't mind, Brian will make comment.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, tremendous job on
Yeah,
what you're
great
doing,
job.
and I think we all agree with that. But you are working to tweak things and make it better, and I think you're hearing from this jury that maybe some other satellite stations in Moss Bluff or the western side of the parish would be something that would be well received. And I think that's something we need to truly look at. That's what I would like to ask with what Ms. Trimmy said, and maybe as echo of this police jury to see if some other satellite areas could help us out, not just east-west, but be a little more convenient. You know, we're about service, and y'all are about service, so if we could get a few more out there, I think it would be a great thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. B.
I just want to point out that the whole issue about the rabies has always been a tough one, the ongoing, but I really just wanted to ask Teresa to comment on this annual clinic. I think it's very positive news. We did go from 17 to 2, which is a major shift, but I don't think we polled the people with as many questions prior to last year, but if we had, there would have been there wouldn't have been near 100% a positive experience. So I think it's a very good news story. We went up 20% from last year. This is only the second year we've done it this way. We do want to get better. Sandy, looking each year, is 2 enough? And I think that's what we're hearing from you. But it's nothing short of, amazing to me with the difference in just 2 years. And we're almost back to those numbers. And I think, I don't want to get too, out there, but if we went up 20% this year, I think we'll meet and exceed those numbers because we're doing it better. The word's going to get out. How much easier it is. Under the old way, you could actually drive from Moss Bluff, go to Burton Coliseum, and get back home quicker than in some cases these clinics if you'd have gone down the street and waited in line. So it's a much better process. I think the issue is if we're not reaching certain areas, and I think they take their address and stuff. If we know for sure people from DeQuincy or Vinton aren't coming, then we know we need to address that. So that's definitely on the list, but I just didn't want to take away from how positive the news is. The people out there were just very pleased with the way it's being done compared to the old way. And I want to say, too, about the veterinarians. The ones that go out there, they're paid for that, but they are very willing to work these, and we had enough. And I want to make sure that they get credit for doing that. They were very helpful, and it's a good news story. But we'll look at all those things.
I'm not trying to make it not a good news. I think the way they set it up, the way they did it, it sounds like it worked absolutely to perfection. It just did not cover the whole parish. That's all my point was. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trimmy. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo Ms. Trimmy's comments. I think the issue is we all agree that it was a great program and was very successful, but, and I don't mean this to be negative, but personally, I don't want to drive from Moss Bluff to Burton Coliseum. It's a 30-minute trip, and maybe you can make it in 15 if you're speeding and breaking the law. So I think it is an issue of convenience. People in DeQuincy, the northern parts of the parish, the people in the remote parts of the parish, going to Burton Coliseum or Sulphur, it might be an inconvenience. So going from 2 to maybe 3 stations or maybe 4, I don't think that's a big stretch. So I'd just like to say yes, great program, y'all did a great job, but I would be seriously interested in seeing what the logistics are of going to 3 stations or 4, and if it's not a big budget crunch or nothing that puts us behind the 8 ball, I think it should be seriously investigated. But kudos, great job, and I think we can always do better.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good job.
Thank you. Mr. Farnham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with everybody that this is an excellent program, and y'all did a fantastic job with it. But I also feel like the whole purpose of the program is to try and reach out to the people that can't afford to take their animal to the vet, people that aren't going to take them to the vet unless they can get it for free. So those same people can't afford $4 a gallon gasoline to drive from Moss Bluff to Burton Coliseum. So that's the point for expanding the locations out, and 3 or 4 probably would be sufficient to cover the whole parish, I would believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farnham. Mrs. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I especially liked all of your publicity. That was real good, and it's well needed. I know we've had different clinics in North Lake Charles, and so in your plan, and if you would continue that would be real good. Generally speaking, I think you're doing a good job, and I look forward to your extending your program. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Griffin. Is there any other comments? Mr. Shepherd, are you finished? Is that it? Thank you. Thank you both very much. Item 6, receive report from staff with reference to the status of the Unified Development Code review process. Mrs. Wallace.
Well, thank you for having me this evening. I'm Jennifer Wallace. I'm one of the Assistant Directors of Planning. And I will be brief tonight. I'm sure you all saw this lovely gift that I presented to all of you this evening. I did give you a copy of all the correspondence that I'm sending out to our review panel members that you all appointed a few months ago, along with a summary of some key components that are proposed for addition to our code. But just to go back a little bit, this Unified Development Code, if you recall, and especially for those viewers at home, this document is consolidating all of Calcasieu Parish's development-related ordinances. And I went through and I counted today, and we've got 16 ordinances that we have consolidated into this one document. And we feel like as a staff that this is a huge step forward, even if we don't add any additional components, just to make it more user-friendly and put it in a better format for the staff, the elected officials, and our citizens to understand. If the additional provisions are adopted, then that's lagniappe. That is just great. The staff that worked on this project is Jimmy Vickers, Alan Wainwright, Tim Connor, Wes Crane, Pam Mattingly, John Kopic, Tammy Tunn, and Dana Guidry. And we've been working really hard on this for a number of months. We're excited to present it to the review panel, and we're going to have our first meeting of that panel on May the 16th at Preon Lake Park. We're going to do that from 5:30 to 7:30, and we have plans to meet every week thereafter. We're going to do a total of 4 meetings, and as those meetings go on, we're going to have very focused and directed discussion. As those meetings go on, we're going to see if the review panel feels like we need more time, or at the end, they may tell us, this is great, go ahead and present it to the Planning and Zoning Board and the Police Jury. So we will not bring anything to all of you to adopt until we get some sort of seal of approval from the review panel. And I would encourage all of you to attend the meetings. It is on your memo. It's going to be May 16th, May 23rd, May 31st, and June 6th. I would encourage all of you to attend the meetings. There's going to be a lot of insight and hopefully some really good discussion. If you have any questions, let me know.
Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just noticed it was going to be at Preon Lake Park. Are we still going to be able to have CGov?
Yes, we have them confirmed for all
Very
4
good.
meetings, yes.
I just wanted to make sure we were going to have that. Thank you.
Mrs. Trimmy.
Yes, I did I did see it, and it was an okay moment. And I'd like to move to defer this until January of 2012.
Second.
I think that we're going at this, you threw this at us, and it was like hit in the face with this, and I'm not ready for this right now. I don't know if the other jurors are, but I'd like to have some time to sit and visit with staff and go through exactly what's been done, and I'd just like to defer this and let us chew on this for a while before we start doing these meetings. And then they just hope we come, but they probably hope we don't. So I'd like to be able to have a little bit more time than just slam dunk. I'm not ready for the slam dunk yet. Thank you. That's my motion, and I have a second.
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor with a second. More discussion. Mrs. Wallace, go ahead. Before you, Mr. Sias, may I?
Oh, I don't have
Okay, go ahead, Jennifer.
I completely understand your concern, and I would never want it to be interpreted that we're trying to rush anything. This component that we're trying to do right now is just to garnish some public comment. We're not ready to come to you with this document for adoption. So I would hope that you would at least let us go out to the public and circulate it and get some input from them with the understanding that we won't bring the document to you until we have a great consensus from the public. I think the history here is that the staff is willing to do that and to not push things forward when there is somewhat of a backlash from the public. I think we've shown you that we're willing to do that and back off and think things through a little bit better. And all we're asking for tonight is to be able to open up public comment on this document.
I stand by my motion. I mean,
I understand.
you can put it on the internet and let them look at it and comment. I mean, you don't have to have meetings at Preon Lake Park. But I am not for going forward with this at this time. That is my motion.
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Mr. Bream.
This actually follows up y'all's action that you appointed specifically all the members of the committee, and maybe Jennifer's got who all's on there, and it also, Mr. Hassan brought it up at the last meeting, where are we on this? So y'all officially took action. This isn't just a public town hall. This is really a meeting of that review panel that y'all appointed, what was it, January, December?
I believe it was December, yes.
So that's specifically following y'all's accord, which we want to make sure we follow through with. So it's not a general public input meeting. It's a working meeting of that group. Now, it is public. So I just want to clarify that. I may not change your motion, but the police jury did take action to approve this panel and to go through this process back in December.
I actually don't have a problem with the panel. I have a problem with the timing and just throwing it out here like this. That's my problem.
You done, Mr. Trimmie?
Yes.
Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Brian just about covered it, but when the UDC was when they began preparing this, that was one of the things that we asked was, before it gets thrown at us, that we put together this committee to review it. And would you mind going over who?
Yes, I have the list.
Who, not only who they are, but what they represent.
Sure.
Because they were going to make recommendations of changing, this document we have right now may not come before us like it is right now. There may be some changes before staff presents it to us. So go ahead and go over the...
We have two realtors. We have Richmond Ronauer and Tommy Eastman, and one is a residential realtor, one is a commercial realtor. We have two builders, Harvey Bassett and Don Veroni. One is a commercial builder and one is a home builder. The architect is Jeff Kudla. The engineer is John Lowry. The utilities representative is Calvin Thibodeau. The agricultural and timber representative is Will Drost. We have two developers, one from the west side and one from the east side. It's Wallace Nichols and Matt Redd. Then we have two at-larges from the east side, Philip Busby and Brad Evans, and at-large on the west side, Diane Dronat and Troy Broussard.
You done?
The only thing I wanted to say was, and I'm not trying to start a debate on Vision Calcasieu. The whole idea of having this committee is so we didn't get blindsided with something again that created such an outrage, to involve developers, everyone related to developing, and all those different industries.
Most impacted.
They are going to be the most impacted, and basically, they're the go-between to all the citizens of our parish, that we don't, that we are better informed before we make a decision on a change. That's all I have.
Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to be casting disparities, but unless I'm remembering correctly, when we were going through the Vision Calcasieu process, we had a committee for that process, and that committee was working on reviewing the document, and then when the outcry came, we had people on the committee objecting to the plan. My question was, why weren't they objecting during the process when the committee was supposed to be working on it? So I agree with my colleague, Mr. Hassan. This committee is in place to provide a healthy process before it comes to us. I just hope that this committee will be active participants on this go-around so we don't get blindsided, because that's what the committee's there for. Secondly, I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. We're not being asked to approve anything. We approved the minimum level of service standards back in January, which was a minimal blanket of coverage, and this process is basically in place so we can make sure that we very thoroughly receive input from the community on what we have, and then at some point at a later date we can take action on it. But the reason that we did what we did back in January was so we had plenty of time, and I want to make sure I'm clear on my understanding of everything. And so I think the time is there, and I just want to make sure I have a good understanding of the situation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Onderpont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur to some degree with Sandy on this issue. What you're asking for is permission for the committee to go forward. I don't have a problem with that either. I don't want to sound negative. My experience in the years that I've been here, public input on these type of things have been minimal, period. For some reason, people don't want to go to these type of meetings, and I think they expect us to make the proper decision. That being said, I don't have a problem with the committee going forward, make the changes that need to be made, and come back with a finished product somewhere towards the end of the year. And then after that, we dissect it and see where we're going with it. But I'm like Sandy. I'm not going to be in a hurry to make a final decision on this. It's too broad. I'm going to be interested in the percentage of who favors this and who disapproves of it. And you know where I stand for a long time.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not trying to go against what you're saying, and I know you can't go forward without the permission of this body, but I don't have a problem with that. What I'm going to have a problem is how much time are we going to be given to make the final decision on it.
Mr. Chair, could I respond
may.
to Mr. Anderson? I certainly understand everyone's perspective, and I've had discussions with the team members about this potential situation. And the one thing I want to point out is that provisional subdivision ordinance that Mr. Spell referenced, it covered 4 interim items, and it was extended to June 30th of this year. Those 4 items, it was the minimum level of service standards, and that's where we asked for large developments in the urban areas to have community sewer. It's additional drainage waivers. It provided for a minor subdivision where folks could come in and get administrative approval on small developments, and it extended the grandfather clause to allow previously approved subdivisions to continue on their path. If that expires on June 30th, I would ask for you at this time, if you do allow me to move forward or not, that you seriously consider either extending that until our goal date, whether it's June of 2012 or January of 2012, or however long is needed. If you wanted to adopt it permanently into code because you know that it's coming in this document, that would be great. But we really need to be mindful that we've extended that to June 30th, and that deadline is upon us. But I do believe that we need to do our due diligence, get all the public comment we need. We have learned that lesson. And we want to do that, but we want to be cognizant that that deadline is upon us.
May I address?
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, April is about gone. So we're talking about May, and you're talking 60 days is what you're telling me, okay? I don't know that I'm going to be in a position to make a decision by June the 30th or around June the 30th. Now, if we have to extend it, then that's what we're going to do. But let me just share one little thing with you here, and I hear this all the time about how we are discouraging development in Calcasieu Parish. And I'm going to tell you, development, to me, other than industry, is the backbone of this parish. It really is. And that's where the sales tax comes in from, development and home building and those type of things, that major, okay?
Right.
So let's be very cautious about, and you got some good people on there. You got some intelligent people on that committee. But let's remember the little guy, okay?
Yes.
That's all I'm saying, Jennifer. And you and I have been pretty candid with each other
Yes.
the whole way. And I just want you to know that if I'm not ready by June the 30th, then I will make a motion to extend it, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Mr. Fornham.
Thank you. Jennifer, I appreciate all the hard work y'all put into this. I agree with Sandy on one hand. I don't think I'm going to be ready to make a decision on this till well after the June deadline, just because of the thickness of this and all that we have to digest. But I'm anxious to see the public get a voice in this, because that's who it pertains to. That's who has to live by this book. And the more time they have to digest it, the better off they're going to be, and the more comfortable they're going to be. So I'm anxious to see the public start to get some input. I think the schedule may be a little bit too aggressive, but you may want to.
This is what I prefer.
Yeah, I know you're working
Yes.
off of that June deadline is what you're
Yes.
shooting for, but I'm here to say I'm ready to extend it right now, because I'm not going to be ready to vote on that before June the 30th. So I yield the floor. Thank you.
Go to January.
Mr. Sias.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, you pretty much covered some of the things that I was asking about. Is after we have these scheduled meetings, is that when we expected to? That's when we expected to vote on it or something, or just what happens after these scheduled meetings?
If the schedule would go exactly as planned,
Right.
June the 6th would be the last meeting of the group, and at that time, we would decide if the document was ready to move forward. If the panel and the staff agrees that it's ready to move forward, it would go to the Planning and Zoning Board a couple weeks later, and if they approve it, then it would come to the police jury.
And I'm kind of like some of my colleagues say, I think it's kind of aggressive because, we've known from the last, when we spread the other one out and we gave a lot of time for people to get a lot of public comments, and everybody just sit back and they didn't give any comments until we came up with something on paper, and all of a sudden they look and they realize, oh, no, we can't do that. Well, so with these 4 meetings, I'm just hoping that, that the people do come out there, but I know that's going to be pretty aggressive. But that's all I want to find out was what happens after we have those 4 meetings. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a comment that we're talking about 2 different things. All that is being proposed right now is that this be forwarded to that committee and they begin going over it. Something Mr. Spell referenced when this had been done in the past. I don't think there will be any problem, and I think Ms. Wallace will agree, this committee will take this very serious and be very, very involved in it. That's why they were picked to be, by all of us to be on it. One thing that I thought about when Mr. Spell was saying what he was saying just now, another important thing is when these objections are made, we need staff to listen to them, because I think that's where our breakdown was before. Those objections were being made, and those people walked away saying, obviously, they couldn't go forward with it. Just here a couple of months ago, we had an issue of the coastal zone, moving that coastal zone. We organized a meeting of the key people that were involved with that. They were adamantly against it. A week later, staff recommended it to the jury. And had those people not come to that meeting, it could have possibly passed. So that being said, with all due respect, I do expect staff, I plan on going to these meetings, but I expect staff to take what this committee has to say. Now, as far as the extension, I think that goes without saying. I agree with every one of y'all that we're not going to, I don't think the committee will be through with it by June 6th. I think it's very aggressive, but I'm glad to see it is in place. And, it's something that, we had expected by the end of the year. I'm looking on here, this was printed March 7th. Here we are, April 28th, and this is going out. I have an issue with that. We knew we had a deadline of
May I address that?
June 30th. I'm just wondering, if I didn't bring it up last week, where we would be. Would these books be sitting in front of us today?
We actually had the text done March the 7th, and then we tackled, it's on page 9, between page 9 and 10. It's the land use matrix, and it's a chart where we put in all of our existing land uses and listed out permissions. So we finished the text May 7th, started printing that, and then we tackled that land use matrix that was done probably about 10 days ago.
Y'all were still in a process. Thank you. I just asked that jurors consider definitely extending, because we're not going to make a decision on this, but this starts that review process where we can get educated on making a decision. And we're not making a decision tonight. We're not going to do that till that is completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haslund. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, I think Mr. Angelpron hit it on the head when he said a lot of people just don't care. They expect us to make that decision. Well, that decision is setting a standard to stop the bleeding of sewer, water, developments that are done improperly, that are unsafe for the area around it, the way they're done. I mean, so there's a lot of issues. So the process needs to continue to go forward. So I'm 100% behind the process to end up with a standard that's easier for people to go through, that really brings this parish to where it needs to be, which is good development. It's helping the community. There's people, and I think it's going to help the little guy and the big guy. But somewhere we got to have a standard to stop the sewers, stop the water. We don't have water here, so we can't keep building without a plan. I mean, this parish was built, I believe, without a plan of infrastructure many, many, many years ago to have maybe not got us to this point today. I don't see why we're building frontage roads today when they should have been built 30 years ago when the interstate was built. So, I mean, that's the kind of issues this is truly about. What are we going to do for vision way down the road? Not vision Calcasieu, but really make big decisions that maybe, well, not everybody's going to be happy, but what's going to be best for this parish, for my kids in the future, when we're not making decisions, but they are? Are we going to help them with what we do right now make those decisions? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to build on what my colleague, Mr. Scott, was saying a little bit, it's just my personal opinion, but if we had a massive network of infrastructure which included sewer, water, and drainage and roads in unincorporated areas of the parish, we probably wouldn't need this as much. I understand the issues with funding that are involved, but I don't think it's this restricting development. I think it's the lack of infrastructure in unincorporated parts of the parish that's restricting. I mean, the whole beef that developers have is you're putting all the cost of infrastructure on my back. That's their complaint. they're seeing it that there is no shared responsibility of the sewer, the water, the transportation, the drainage infrastructure, as a shared partnership between government and the developer. They're seeing it that I got to do all of it, and I don't think that's fair. I agree with that. I believe government should be a partner, a team player in that process. And have we been working on that? Yes. If we were talking about gaming, if you look at the gaming funding, we've been putting a lot of money into water systems. We've been putting money into roads and drainage. We've been doing those things, but we're behind. And we need to fix that. But if we were ahead, as Mr. Scott was alluding to, this would not be as necessary, and we probably would not be getting the backlash from developers that we're getting. So, and I know, I'm everybody picks on me because all I talk about is sewer, but I mean, that, to me, that is the issue. We need to start moving ahead on infrastructure so we can be a team player with the developer, and then that way this is not as much of an issue. But something else I also want to say is if I'm remembering correctly, we put this deadline there back in January because we wanted to tell planning staff to hurry up. I don't have any objections to postponing that deadline. If it's January 1st of 2012, I personally don't have any objections to that. But I believe we put this June deadline on there because we wanted staff to hurry up with what they were doing as far as the process. But if we need more time, I have no objections to more time on the process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jennifer, could you recap what your plan is with this committee for us, please? Just tell me where you are right now.
The original
and where
plan
you need
or
to
the
be.
modified plan? The original plan was to meet with them starting May the 16th, where we do an overview and go over some of the high points, and I provided you with that summary with your binder. And just lay out the rules, what our purpose is, things like that. Come back on May 23rd and actually go through each of those key components that's summarized in more detail and start to get some feedback from the citizen.
From your committee?
Yes. From the review panel. The floor would be open to comments at the end for any folks that are interested in coming along. The following week on the 31st, we would try to hammer out some consensus, because surely there's a few things in that summary that we can all agree on. And then we'd also ask for them to, the review panel, to give us any extra items that have already been adopted that may be hindering development. We may have a rule on the books from 20 years ago that developers really have a problem with. Well, now's their time to bring it up. So those items would set our agenda for the next week. We'd come back, try to get some more consensus, and say, okay, are we ready to move forward now? And if we need more time, in my mind, we could come to the police jury and say, hey, we agree with the review panel. We need more public comment. We need more thought, more time to chew on this. Can you extend that provisional subdivision ordinance? But you never know. We could get into this 4 meetings, and this group may say, this is a great product. We really don't know until we get into it. We're just asking tonight for permission to get into it.
Okay. Good, thank you. We do have a motion on the floor with a second. I think we need a roll call, Madam Secretary. Unless someone is...
I just have a clarification.
Go ahead.
Are we voting, is your motion to not let them move forward with the review panel?
My motion is for them to move forward starting January 12.
With the review panel?
Yes. So that, I know it's all of their decision. It's their decision, it's the review panel decision, it's planning and zoning, it's staff, it's all those. But they give us no time to look at it for us to have any input or decision of our own. All we get is what they bring to us. And that's why I would like to look at it myself before it actually gets put out for the public, so that I could have some say individually, my own. I mean, yeah, I've been down and out for a year. Yeah, I wasn't up to par in January when all this took place. But I'm feeling better now. So now I'm going to let you know that I would like to at least have some time. I realize that I took my own time in a different way, but the thing about it is, I think this accelerates something so fast that personally, I would like to have more time to digest what's in this book that they just printed out on March the 27th. That's just my opinion, before we even throw it out there. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sandy, in all due respect, I think what they're asking for is just allow the committee to go forward. We all agree that we're not going to be ready to make a decision. This body's not going to be ready to make a decision by June the 30th. So we're going to take all the time that we need. I think what's happens is if we wait till after January to just let the committee get started, I think we're going to get bogged down. And I understand where you're coming from. And you missed a lot by, not your fault, of course, but reconsider to just let the committee move forward that's in place and do their study. It's got to come back to us anyway. And you heard what Les said a while ago. He's not going to be in a position to make a decision by the 30th of June, and I'm not either, and you're not either. I don't think anybody on this panel is going to be. So all she's saying is let's just go forward with the committee, and let's see what they bring back, and we'll take all the time we need to go ahead and move forward. You understand where I'm coming from?
It just seems to me that, I'm sorry.
Mr. Guidry, are you finished, Mr. Underpump?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Guidry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to agree with Mr. Anderson. This is a thick book. This is a lot to take in. But Jennifer and them has already started the process, and I would hate for them not to be able to move forward on just getting input from the public. So we can, that's the understanding that we're all taking here tonight, Ms. Wallace, that we're just going to have input from developers and from the general public to say what rules that may have been in place for 20 years may need to be changed because of the different things that are now. So I really can't see us moving forward on this for that reason, with just saying that we're going to have input from the general public on this UDC so that we can know exactly, as a governing body, what decisions we should make for the betterment of the public and for our constituents. So that's my feeling on it. I agree with Mr. Andrew Barton.
Don't hit me.
Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To be perfectly honest with you, what I like most about this committee starting to review it, that's going to help me understand it more. I could sit here and read it for the next 30 days over and over and over again. I'm not going to truly understand the impact that it has to the developers, to everyone involved, which all of that ends up affecting the person buying the lot. This process will help me better understand that. I have no idea what my decision will be in 30 days or 6 months. We might not be at a point where we're ready to make that decision. I'm just ready for that process to start so we can start becoming educated ourselves by people that are directly affected by all of the ordinances that we do. And I just think it's a positive move forward without making anything set in stone permanent. Thank you.
Mr. Trimmy.
I still feel that it's a pretty aggressive move, and that I probably won't understand it any better than Mr. Hassan will when I read it. But I can call and ask questions and get some clarification on things that I don't. But I really feel like none of us so far, everyone that has spoken has said June the 30th is out. They're not going to be wanting to make a decision. So what I'm saying is, if we're not going to be we don't feel comfortable already making a decision for June the 30th, then I think this should be pushed back so that we can be knowing that this is coming up, getting a little more personally educated to be able to, because everything that is being said is, we'll bring it back to you when we're finished. I'm going to go to the meeting. Not everybody, I probably can't make them all, but I'm going to go. But not all of us are going to be able to be at every one of those meetings. Not each one. And something different happens at every time. I would like to be a little more abreast of what is happening, because the bottom line is, of what is being said, is once the staff feels like it's ready for us to know something, then they'll tell us. That's basically what they're telling us. And I just feel like that's just sort of a little harsh to throw it on us after all the chewing. They're going to do all the chewing, and then they're going to throw it to us, and they're going to throw the bone to us to catch. So that's my opinion. I feel like I need a little more time, and it would be easy for me to say, oh, yeah, just go on, do whatever you want to do, because you're going to do whatever you want to do anyway. So, but I'm not going to say that. You just vote against the motion, and then y'all just do whatever you want to do. But I have to tell you how I feel, and that's the way I feel.
Call for question.
Ms. Griffin, with your permission, may I allow Mrs. Wallace to make a comment?
Yes, sir.
Please? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. I just wanted to maybe propose a compromise, but because what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of concerns over the aggressive schedule. And I had those similar concerns when I was making the schedule, but we had that June 30th deadline. And I think if the police jury would feel comfortable extending that provisional subdivision ordinance to January, maybe instead the staff doesn't have such an aggressive schedule with the Public Review Committee, and we space out our meetings. Maybe we have a meeting in May, a meeting in June, a meeting in July, which would give 30 days time between for everybody to think about it and give more time to process it and feel like you're swallowing it better.
Jennifer, excuse me, I'm not supposed to talk.
Go ahead.
All right. If you're willing, then I'm willing to push the deadline from the June 30th deadline that it's set now, where it puts them in a very aggressive mode, to put it to January 1 of 2012, and then that gives them a large time frame to be able to set up their committee, and the people that are on this, these people are giving their time to the parish to be able to serve on this committee, and they're very busy, and I think and it's an awesome group that they've listed on here. They're very smart business people that'll make really good decisions. But I think that it was so tight that it was just very hard for me to say, okay, January 30th, bam, bam, thank you, ma'am, we're going to tell you what we think, and you vote on it. There you go. So I will amend my motion, if I could get Ms. Griffin to second it, to set the deadline for January on our staff and the groups that are meeting to have a little more powerful meeting time that gives them a lot more time to be able to work this out before they actually bring it.
Mr. Beam.
I think to help Sandy, I want to make sure we get the right motion if y'all choose to do this. Isn't it, why don't you state what it would actually be an extension of those items provisional? It's not.
That's correct.
It's got to be.
Extension of the provisional subdivision ordinance that was originally adopted by the police jury, I believe it was January 6th, until January 31st of 2012.
Yes.
To allow the staff more time to...
That will be my motion. Elizabeth, will you second that? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hang on just a minute. I have a motion and a second. Mrs. Griffin, you had comment on the...
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I did, but now we're on a different avenue. But I did want to remind Jennifer that I had a lot of issues with the first proposal you brought. And I am concerned about the developers, but I'm also concerned about our citizens of the parish. So I want to make sure that they're taken into consideration. You know, we have a middle-class set of individuals in our society, and we have a class that's below. I want to make sure that all of our citizens are given an opportunity to have a nice home. So take that into consideration when you bring it back to us, so that we wouldn't have to go through the terrible ordeal we went through when the first one came through, particularly the size of those lots. I appreciate that.
Dr. Mackey.
I was just going to call the question.
Have one comment.
You don't have a second, Dr. Mackey. Mr. McMillan, it does require a
Thank you.
second.
Just real quick, I like the schedule that you're on the review panel. I think we ought to move forward with that. All this has to come back to this jury anyhow. Whether we set the date that Sandy wants to in 2012, nothing's going to happen till it goes through the proper channels. I mean, we could set that date tonight. It's an arbitrary date, but if they came back and told us, we've worked it out in 4 months, this is a great plan, we don't need to wait till January, that could happen. That date doesn't really mean anything because we have the final ruling on that. Do we need to back it up? Absolutely. I don't think any of us are going to be ready in time to do this. But do we need to go forward with the review panel? Absolutely. We need to move forward with that. We've got the committee in place. That's what we've been working on. Let them get after it. Let them do what they need to do. Then it'll all come back to us, and then we can take action on that. We can back it up now and set that date, but if it comes back and they say we've got it done in 4 months, then we could also move on that. It's not, we're kind of really working something real hard to say that the final decision rests with us, and we will make that decision when we have all the information. And what I heard Jennifer say, she's not going to force feed anything on any of us. We're going to make sure we get everything heard, and we're going to have plenty of time to read everything and plenty of meetings to do it in before this comes up. So I'm okay with your motion on the time frame, but I can tell you, if they come back after these committees and say they're done, we can move forward with that too. Thank you.
Second Dr. Mackey's motion.
Mr. Brame.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Trimmy, I appreciate you changing your motion. What it does, I feel like, and I'm sitting here listening to the conversation and all the talk that's going on, but the pushing it back, I mean, you had 4 meetings set up before June? Mm-hmm. Okay, see, this will give us the whole rest of the year for meetings, and I have a feeling right now it's going to take more than 4 meetings. So, and with them spaced out like that, just like you mentioned, the 30 days, I think that's great. But I still, I'm glad you amended your motion because I wouldn't be ready by June either. There's no way. But it gives the committees more time to discuss. And they're going to need more than 4 meetings. I know that right now. So anyway, that was my comment.
Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will not support the motion, especially with this January of next year and all that. Leave the date where it is. If we get to the time that we need more time, then that would be the appropriate time to change the date. But, you know, who's kidding who? We're talking about an aggressive schedule. That's a joke. How many years have you been working on this? I want to know what year this was started, Mr. Vickers. And the beginning of this is Vision Calcasieu and even before that. So this is not an aggressive schedule. This is a joke. It's been going on for years.
08.
08. 3 years. That's not aggressive. I mean, government time. People make jokes about that. People want to see things move forward. They don't want to see things take years for us to just talk about it. I'm sorry.
Question's been called.
One more, Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing, and I don't know if your motion includes this or not, and I just want a clarification of that. Is your motion including taking these meetings and spreading them on a monthly basis?
No, actually, my motion...
Just moving the deadline.
It doesn't, they set their own deadline dates. They set their own dates
Okay.
of their own meetings. All this does is it moves the deadline date back, and then that can change, but at least they're not bound to June the 30th. That's the whole issue.
If I understood Jennifer right, that committee after the 4, I'd like to stay on that schedule that she has, just out of respect for that committee, because I don't think they were wanting to commit to a 6-month, 8-month, deal. But the committee will be in control, basically, if they unanimously are saying, or the majority of them are saying, or whatever, that they need more to work through, you're going to have 4 more meetings, if that's what it takes. So I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor, Mr. Chairman.
And it is my motion.
But go ahead.
We can go ahead and vote on it, but I did want to clarify that consultants were hired in 2008. Consultants put this together. I'm letting you know this, that our staff relied on paying big bucks to consultants that came up with something that was not really palatable at that time. So then we took what the consultants did and a lot of people couldn't live with, and the staff is trying to tweak it down to what the people can live with. Now, if I'm wrong on that, I'll accept it. Am I right?
You're right.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
We need clarification on what we're voting on, please. What is the motion?
The motion on the floor is to extend the provisions of the Provisional Development Ordinance, which was originally adopted by the police chair on January 6th of this year, to extend those provisions until January the 1st of 2012 to allow the staff and the review panel more time to develop the Unified Development Code. Is that correct?
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, there's been a call to vote by moving the question in a second. Under the rules, you're supposed to have an immediate vote. No more discussion. It takes 2/3 to pass that motion. Then if it passes, then someone has to move the motion, which is to extend the temporary provisions to January the 1st. So right now, it'll take 2/3 to simply stop debate, you call the question, and you need to vote on it now.
So do we call roll call for that?
Yes.
Okay. Right now, we're calling roll to call for a question. Is that correct?
Which ends debate, and then you'll have to bring up the motion.
Okay, roll call, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Anderpont? This is to
Yes.
call the question. Mr. Brame?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farnham?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Guidry?
Yes.
Mr. Hassan?
Yes.
Mr. Landry?
Yes.
Dr. Mackey?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Spell?
Yes.
Mr. Size?
Yes.
And Mrs. Trimmie?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Now you vote on the motion.
On the floor. I just read. Is everybody?
Go for it.
This will be a reverse roll call. Mrs. Trimmie?
Yes.
Mr. Size?
Yes.
Hold on just a second. I got my columns mixed up. Mr. Spell?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
Nope.
Dr. Mackey?
No.
Mr. Landry?
No.
Mr. Hassan?
Yes.
Mr. Guidry?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Farnham?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Brame?
Yes.
And Mr. Anderpont?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 yeas, 3 nays. The motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to receive report and continue with the review process.
Second.
Committee.
I have a motion by Mr. Hassan and a second by Mr. Guidry. Is there any discussion?
We have discussion.
Mrs. Griffin?
May I call for question, Mr. Chair? I do call for question.
Second.
Okay, we need a roll call vote?
We're voting to vote?
I'm not quite sure what.
I
I'm voting.
I don't know that, I think the motion y'all passed just a minute ago covers that item. I don't,
Oh, I didn't know if it did.
yeah, I mean, the way I know I interpret it is, embodied in that is that it goes forward. The meeting dates can be set according to what the committee works on, but you really don't need another motion
Withdraw.
on that.
Motion
If
withdrawn.
that helps.
Yeah.
Yay.
Mr. Chairman, I did have one question.
Go ahead, Mr. Hassan.
Ms. Wallace, do we still have a consultant on the payroll?
Yes, he does our research and he puts together our formatting, but the staff does all their own work, and we haven't seen the consultant since probably April of last year.
How much
So,
are we paying the consultant we haven't seen since April of last year?
I can't tell you right offhand. I would have to check. I'd say for this document, we probably paid him about $100,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Is there any other discussion?
I have a question, Mr.
Mrs.
Chairman.
Griffin?
Jennifer, I'm kind of confused. probably $100,000 and you have not consulted with him since last April?
No, ma'am. We haven't seen him since last April.
Okay.
We do everything by email and conference call, but this document is not a consultant's document, is the point that I was trying to make. This document is produced by the staff. It is formatted. Anytime we need research, we get with the consultant. He does all the research on the industry standards and things like that. But this was done at the direction of the staff.
I understand that, which you did not explain thoroughly just now. So your $100,000 that you paid him was for him to review and do his professional look on it and take?
Yes.
As to what you have done, to see whether or not it is in order?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Spelt.
Ms. Wallace, just a question about meetings. Will the meeting locations be in various places around the parish, or we just sticking to one spot?
We did that for Vision Calcasieu. I don't know that it really increased our attendance that much, so we were going to try to just have everything at Preon Lake Park this time. And that way we can set up the logistics. We know every meeting, how the cameras will be set up and the microphones, and we'll have a comfort level. We can do things differently if you prefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Brame.
Ms. Wallace, how are we going to get the word out to the public?
We could do something similar to what we did with Vision Calcasieu. We did press releases, and Mr. Guidros was very nice about doing articles and things like that.
Maybe we could find another way, because with Vision Calcasieu, we didn't have a lot of attendance at all. I mean, because I went to several meetings and there was nobody there, so maybe we can try a different approach.
I can tell you this, we had Jason Barnes on the task, and we all know that he's great at PR.
Right.
And if you recall, for Vision Calcasieu, I personally went to 100 meetings, over 100 meetings with civic groups and things like that. I don't know at this point what more we could do other than offering some type of freebie or gimmick to get the public to come to the meeting.
Yeah, you can't make them go.
No.
That's right.
You can't.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brame. Any other questions for Mrs. Wallace? Mr. Hass.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I at what point do we cut off the consultant?
He has.
Is he approved for a certain amount?
Yes. He is approved for amount not to exceed, I believe on this project, it's specifically $150,000. And
just on this project, that doesn't count what we spent on Vision Calcasieu.
No. And Vision Calcasieu, I can tell you, I don't know the exact amount, but it was much more expensive because he played such a large role. And to be honest with you,
it was a complete disaster.
The price that I told you we've paid him so far is much less, and it's an indication of how much more involved the staff was on this particular project.
Thank you.
Mr. Beam.
It's okay, never mind.
Is there any other discussion? Any other questions for Ms. Wallace? Jennifer, I know you worked real hard on this, and I want to personally thank you. And I'm sure you're going through a lot, but we're going to get to the bottom of it one of these days. Any other questions for Ms. Wallace? Item number 7, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution authorizing the president of the police jury to execute the necessary documents for acquisition of right-of-way from Lucia Lynn Bellinger. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item 7 carries. Item 8, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution authorizing the president of the police jury to execute the necessary documentation for expropriation of right-of-way from this group of people. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mrs. Griffin. Is there any objection? Any discussion? Seeing none, item 8 carries. Item 9, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting a resolution authorizing the president of the police jury to execute supplemental agreement number 1 between the police jury and Lanson Engineers Incorporated. I have a motion by Mr. Onderpont and a second by Mr. Sias. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item 9 carried. Item 10, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to adopting an ordinance and/or amending existing ordinances to establish a speed limit of 25 miles per hour on Mini Ranch Lane in Ward 4.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Sias. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item 10 carried. Item 11, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to accepting Coffee Pines Part 2, Phase 2 subdivision located off Coffee Road in Ward 1. I have a motion by Mrs. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Spell. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item 11 carried. Item 12, consideration of making a recommendation with reference to accepting Presley Park subdivision located off Goodman Road, Ward 3 of Calcasieu Parish. I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item 12 carries.
Move to adjourn.
Second. I had a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.
Really?
17 through 23.
Business, you still supposed to discuss it.
Now call the Agenda Committee dated Thursday, April 28, 2011 to order. The purpose of today's committee meeting is to formulate an agenda for the regular meeting of the police jury on May 5, 2011. I'll now take a motion and a second to pull items 17 through 23. I have a motion by Mr. Collins, a second by Mr. Hassan. Number 17. Take appropriate action on the expiration of the term of Mr. John A. Jinks, Sr. as a member of the Lake Charles North Redevelopment Authority in accordance with
Move to
LSA
reappoint.
RS 334720.191. Mr. Jenkins represents Police Jury Districts 2, 3, and 4. Mr. Collins, Ms. Griffin, Mr. Sias. I have a motion by Ms. Griffin, a second by Mr. Guidry to reappoint.
That is correct.
To reappoint Mr. Jenkins. Have any discussion? Any objection? Motion passes. Number 18. Take appropriate action on the
Move to
expiration of the
reappoint,
term of Ms.
Joyce Doucette.
Doucette as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Recreation District Number 1 of Ward 8. I have a motion to reappoint Ms. Doucette by Mr. Stelly, a second by Mr. McMillan. Have any discussion? Any objection?
19 of you guys.
Motion passes. Number 19. Take appropriate action on the expiration of the term of Mr. Lewis Appleby as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Gravity Drainage District Number 5.
Move to
Ward
reappoint
4.
Mr. Appleby.
I have a motion to reappoint Mr. Appleby by Mr. Angelpon, a second by Mr. McMillan. Do we have any discussion? Any objection? Motion passes. Number 20. Take appropriate action on the expiration of the term of Mr. Neil Nelson as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Gravity Drainage District Number 5 of Ward 4. Mr. Nelson represents 3, 11, and 12. Mr. Angelpont, Mr. Farnham, and liaisons. I have a motion to reappoint by Mr. Farnham, a second by Mr. Hassan. Have any discussion? Any objection? Motion passes. Number 21. Take appropriate action on the expiration of the term of Mr. Willie Irvin as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Waterworks District Number 5 of Wards 3 and 8. I have a motion to reappoint by Mr. Collins, a second by Mr. Sias. To have any discussion? Any objection? Motion passes. Number 22.
Move defer for 30 days.
Second.
Take appropriate action on a vacancy created by the resignation of Mr. Leroy Blunt as a member of the Board of Commissioners of Waterworks District Number 2 of Ward 4. Mr. McMillan's liaison. He makes a motion to defer for 30 days. I have a second by Mr. Stelly. Do I have any discussion? Any objection? Motion to defer passes. Number 23 is an advise action. Advise that a letter has been received from Senator Willie L. Mount stating that she is appointing Ms. Cheryl O'Neill to replace Mr. Frank Webb as a member of the Board of Commissioners of the Ward 1 Economic Development Board. At this time, I'd like to call on President Brain for a personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add to the agenda of next week's regular meeting and adopt a resolution of condolences to be forwarded to the family of Miss Patricia Cleckley Klein, mother of former police juror and State Representative Chuck Cleckley.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.